Welcome to the new studio.
This is the new digs.
Dude, I've been pretty disconnected from this whole process. So
Yeah.
you want to give an overview on what the heck happened, what we're doing?
Well, one, I think it's probably a good idea that you were disconnected from the process.
It's great for my mental health.
I mean, aren't you also, didn't you just finish construction or whatever you were doing at your house?
We're going on 2.5 years of like full on, just it's a whole thing, never mind.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm living in a construction zone still.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I feel like anytime there's anything that's being constructed, it's always like a huge process and it's such a headache. Permitting and the making sure the specs work, and you don't think about how many elements go into making a house. You know, so for this room, for example, you're thinking about the wiring, the plumbing, the HVAC, the walls have to be a certain criteria for the soundproofing, and then it's also got to be, you know, in compliance with what the landlord says the building has to be, which has to be in compliance with the city and with the state.
Yeah.
And the process is crazy. But we started this build, I think we broke ground the beginning of June. And here we are, beginning of October, and you know the ending kind of came together really quickly. Like it was a lot of just getting things prepared, and then once like the building started actually happening, these walls got put up quickly, everything got closed up, and then within a week, this went from just like an empty vacant room to like a full-on design that you see now.
That's cool. So 4 months, and yeah, we went from nothing
Yeah.
to that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good when you're dealing with all that permitting.
It is transformation without disruption because we kept the podcast going.
We did. We kept the sales team going too. They sit right out here. So
Yeah.
despite the noise from construction, they were good to go.
Yeah,
So
they were good,
yeah.
and we were good as well on our end too. It wasn't like they were too distracting. These mics are phenomenal at just picking up what's in front of it. Couple of great episodes. That was in New York. We was fortunate to have a podcast studio that's around the block from where the office is. So awesome having that location.
Yeah.
We're able to keep going.
Yeah.
And now here we are in the transformed studio, which I felt was a fitting theme for transformation without disruption.
Perfect. Nice segue. Before we do that, I want to just sincerely thank the entire FloQast Studios team for all their work, moving over here, getting everything set up. It was a big effort, and I hope everyone listening enjoys the setup, the sound, the quality, and everything, because there's a lot of work that went into this. So thank you very much, team. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for sticking with us through the transformation process. And so obviously that's on the new digs. And then as far as, you know, life goes on, right? Because you have been a little bit disconnected. You're running around, a lot of transformation happening, which we'll get into during today's episode. But what'd you do this past weekend, past weeks? What's been the vibe of?
Well, I've been traveling a lot for work. At least that's been a lot of fun. Like literally last month and a half, Australia, visiting the team down there. That was a lot of fun. I really like the country at large. I really enjoyed my time in Australia first time, but like visiting the team, we have a really good thing going on down there, and we just had a big moment in that office history where our first 2 BDRs got promoted to account executives. And you know, our strategy is we generally send some Americans over to help launch the office. We hire entry level. We'll get a couple BDRs to sort of get the office going. And then a year or so later, if they do well and we're doing well, they'll get promoted. So I view that as a really big milestone in office history. Like when a local has been hired, has been successful to the point where they've been promoted, just feels like a big milestone. And so that just happened. So we had our first 2, so congratulations to those guys, Shamir and Tom out there. And then got to visit our office in London, but also in the meantime was in like DC, Chicago, New York, all over the place. So it's been a lot of fun. And a big part of it is talking about some of our new positioning and messaging and like sort of testing out how people are responding to it and the accounting transformation platform, which we'll talk about more. But yeah, work has basically been that. And then this weekend was enjoying game 1 of the Dodgers series. And then, unfortunately, I was at game 2 where both the team and the fans looked pretty terrible at that game. So that was not the proudest moment as a Dodger fan.
Sure.
So, yeah. And then I'm getting ready to watch the game tonight. And I'm hopeful, but
the interesting thing is by the time this episode launches, we'll be able to look back in history and say from this moment when this was happening, you know, how does it hold true? Because the Mets, I think, are playing right now, and I don't know what the score is, and I'm just not going to look until after. And sometimes ignorance is bliss.
I gotta say, for baseball, a Dodgers Mets NLCS would be great.
For it.
And then either world, as long as the Yankees are in the World Series, either one of those teams would be a great matchup as 2. Could you imagine if it was Mets Yankees or Dodgers Yankees? Like that would be such a killer World Series. So.
I mean, it'd be so cool, especially. I mean, just the history of those teams as a collective, and the Mets. I always talk about the Mets originating out of the moving of, you know, the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants to California. So it's cool stuff. I had a lot of anxiety. I mean, the Mets have had this magical run. I got to just plug them for that. Which is just, but like I was saying earlier, this is like a script that you can't even write. It's just writing itself, which is really cool to have all the games at this point be 1-1.
That's what's awesome. Playoff baseball is insane. Anything can happen. Whoever's hot, and the Mets are clearly hot. So yeah, dude, I think you got a shot. I mean, Phillies are really good, but like I definitely wouldn't throw in the towel. Teams have ridden hot streaks all the way to the World Series.
For sure. But with that being said, let's get flowing.
All right, let's start the podcast. Welcome to FinTech Flo.
Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is the FinTech Flo. Mike, glad to have you back.
Excited to be back, yeah. But as we discussed, a lot of travel, but I'm happy to be here in our brand new studio.
Yeah, so we've been having a lot of great guests. We had Adam Suha actually on. We were talking at the beginning of the show about the London office and the cool opportunity to promote people that are there. So it's cool for him, who's the first person to kind of take that trajectory and then go replicate it and do it over in London.
Yeah.
It's we also met with Joey Reeves. He's the founder of Universal CPA Review, talking a lot about the pipeline and the NASBA credit changes that
Does
have been happening.
Does he have a solution to the problem?
Well, he wants to make accounting sexy again.
Okay.
Or I don't know if again is the right word.
I know again isn't the right word. Make it something people want to major in, or at least like learn about through his courses and be able to enter the profession.
Sure.
Yeah.
When I think what was interesting too is talking about how like he's like finance did a really good job of making the finance profession attractive. It's again, some of it through the more edgy, spicy sort of means of like you think like Wolf of Wall Street. That's not like, oh, I want to look up to this guy, but it does get people riled up and gets them excited about going down a certain path and whatnot.
And then you still end up at a computer behind a spreadsheet.
Yeah. At the end of the day, but at least the perception from the outside is like, oh, that's a hot rod job, you know. You think of like the starter packs of what they give you. Give you your vest, and you've got your Rolex, and you've got your BMW 3 Series, and there's all this stereotype of it. Even though it is not necessarily the most positive, it's still, we live in a society where always the most positive isn't always the most interesting or attractive.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking as I said, like, let's get flowing. Is you always say like you're ready to rip it. And I was wondering, like, like that's kind of like not a bad, you know, rip tides and water flows. And
I like your let's get flown.
Yeah,
for what it's worth.
Yeah,
rip it's more of F it. Let's just do this.
Morning Brew Daily does let's ride, which comes from Russell Wilson.
What is that from?
It's from the really cringe Russell Wilson when he was in Denver, and he's like, you know, Bronco Nation. Let's ride.
All right, I'm gonna stick with. Let's rip it.
So I like you. Yeah, you could rip it, and we'll get flowing. Other breaking news, though, as we get into the FinTech 411, because a lot of stories which FloQast is actually at the center of in the fintech space. So it's a perfect episode for you to come back on. But other news also related to things that you're interested in besides just accounting transformation is Shohei Ohtani, and he's blowing up all over the internet, by the way. It's just like, this is getting ridiculous. And you start seeing, it's just a picture of him, like, come see Shohei later today. And it's him in the middle of like a crime show or like a police chase. And it's like the little pop-up logo from the bottom corner. And it's just, you know, see him tonight.
Yeah.
Like this is out of hand. But you heard about the controversy and the drama over his 50-50 baseball?
I heard there's a lawsuit happening now. And what's your take on it?
So I was so confused. And for context, basically, Shohei hit his 50th home run in the same game. He also stole his 50th base, right?
No? I think he got the home runs, or he got the stolen bases first.
Stolen bases first, and then he hit. Yeah. So his 50th home run ball, which put him part of the 50-50 club. Sorry. So yes, he
only player ever.
Only player to ever
50-50 player. Yep.
That 50th home run landed out in the field home run, and there's an argument over who owns that ball, and an auction house is currently auctioning off the ball because every party who's in the lawsuit agreed that that's okay, which I thought was interesting.
Really?
They came together and said, okay, we'll still auction it off. We both would have kept it, but for safety purposes, like, yeah, we can auction it off. And then 3 people at this point now have claimed that they are actually the true owner of the ball. And I'm saying, well, this is really confusing. Well, shouldn't it just be the person who's holding the ball and gives it to the auction house is the owner of it? But
yeah. I've seen the video. I didn't know it was up to 3 now. I've seen the video after the first lawsuit was filed. And I think the kid, I can kind of see him having a little bit of a claim because it seemed like he had it first and then the guy in the black shirt ripped it out of his hand. So I don't know if there's like a legal art, but the angle, it's like if you were playing by the NFL or like the replay
college,
rules, you'd be like, it's not conclusive.
You can't
I
overturn
can't overturn the call on the field. And like I think that's how you would step away from it. But it does feel like it was a stronger dude bullying a younger kid and just ripping the ball away from him. I don't see how two more people would enter the fold.
So I think the third person probably is just like, I want to throw my name in the hat. Right? I mean, like, I actually had it. I don't know. I mean, we have cameras. We can see this stuff. But I think the reason they probably both agreed to it is there's probably a way for them to sell it and then have some sort of settling so that whoever loses still has like, they kind of hedge their bets a little bit as opposed to saying like, no, I want to fight for ownership of the ball. Because once you fight for ownership of the ball, there's only one ball. But if there's $1.8 million, then...
Yeah, and they both would have sold the ball.
Yeah.
Like, let's get out of here. And you should probably strike while the iron's hot.
Right.
Like waiting, you let the emotions die down in the off season and maybe people aren't as fired up to bid on the ball. I think it makes sense for that to be the most profitable approach.
Yeah. So I just thought that was like a fascinating thing. I went down the whole rabbit hole of like, how can multiple people say that they own one item when clearly it's like a thing that you can hold in your hand?
What was your take? Did you see the video?
I didn't watch
like
the footage.
Somebody has their cell phone from behind. And first of all, I'm like, why are you not trying to catch this ball? You're close enough to where put the phone down and try to get the ball. But no, they were busy filming the whole thing. It does look a little, but like I said, call in the field. The guy had the ball. It was listed at auction.
If anybody's got any hot takes or special secret angles, let us know.
I would love to hear I should probably research it more, but what's the actual legal opinion on it?
How does that work? Is it the first person to have hold it? Is it the person who ends up with it? Yeah, same like a fumble. Speaking of being on your phone all the time, one of the things that's happening is, of course, everything is an ad. And so one of this article here is from the Financial Times. This is from relating to financial companies, including credit card issuers, banks, and payment processors who sit on large troves of customers' data. They are increasingly seeking to monetize it. So companies including PayPal and Chase are moving to partner with advertisers to offer transaction-enabled marketing campaigns. And this kind of goes along with some other stuff. Like Bloomberg had recently talked about the FDIC eyeing a proposal to protect customers from fintech failures because you have these third-party applications. Right, like you can use Plaid or something to be the intermediary, or Square, right? And so you have all these different payment processors and fintech companies that plug into your main banks. The question is, as far as the security part goes, it's how much, how responsible is the bank for working with this third-party authorized user? And then the other thing is, I mean, should companies be able to use their customer data to monetize, even if it's not advertising their own product? It's not Chase or PayPal advertising Chase or PayPal. It's using what they know about you, perhaps your spending habits, any other information, your household income, gender, all that sort of stuff.
So it would be like, hey, we saw you booked flights to Hawaii and a hotel. Would you like to buy a bathing suit?
Yeah.
That's how it would be advertised. I don't like that.
Right?
I don't like that at all. No.
But so, I mean, do you think, so it doesn't matter what I think the product is, right? Whether it's bathing suits or whether it's financial services, I think it's just got to be, I think they have to make some sort of thing where like you can only advertise your own company on your own platform. I don't know, but then that gets into a whole rabbit hole.
Do banks really need more ways to make money?
Well, that's what
you got to be kidding me. Well, like, at what point is it enough? No, I'm not good with this. That's messed up.
Yeah. I was wondering, is there a line being crossed when it comes to ads being everywhere? It's on everything, and because this is only going to get worse. I mean, we're talking about with banks right now, but you can apply this to anything, anywhere, and this has been a topic of conversation. Your car knows a lot about your habits.
Yeah,
I mean, especially now that cars are essentially just supercomputers with wheels, and so they could start advertising. I mean, you start to see it on the maps on your phone are directing you to the nearest Dunkin' or to the nearest restaurant because hears you say you're hungry or something. I mean, like you can monetize and advertise every part of life. Is it just fair game at this point where it's just everyone's doing it, so you become totally desensitized to it, so it doesn't matter eventually?
Probably. And I can sit here today and be like, that's so weird for them to use my financial data to advertise to me. But 10 years ago, I would have said the same thing about using my location to advertise to me. And that's now commonplace.
Yeah.
And so, or the phone shouldn't be listening to me and then advertising what comes up afterwards, but that's commonplace. And I think we've all just accepted that. So yeah, you're right. We'll probably get to a point of acceptance. It won't take too long. And then we'll be like, oh, I would like a bathing suit. Yeah. Good call. Yeah. Thanks, Instagram. And then go buy it.
Have you seen Mad Men before?
I have not, no.
I've only watched the first episode, which I thought was a phenomenal episode. I just couldn't get into the whole long series of it, but the first one was kind of exciting.
Okay.
Where they talked about big tobacco, and it was the time when they banned them from saying, like, there's a safer cigarette. And they're trying to figure out, well, how do we market? How do we advertise? Like, I don't understand. Like, what can we do if we're not allowed to talk about how ours is like healthier compared to the competitors? And then one guy has this click moment, and he's like, no, everybody's on the same page now. Nobody can use that anymore as their differentiating factor. Now we get to be creative. It's toasted. You know, like we talk about the process. We talk about the feeling. We talk about everything else. We don't have to talk about that anymore because that's been taken off the table. And so I wonder if this is sort of one of those situations where it actually is an opportunity, because as every company continues to overly try to monetize everything, it gives you the chance to like zig when everyone's zagging or zag when everyone's zigging. And maybe you take a counteractive approach.
And not market.
Yeah. I mean,
Advertise?
how much of a better experience would it be for the user if they're not getting spammed constantly with ads? And it might be in the short term a hit compared to everybody else's, you know, income statement and immediately going up. But are you building more brand equity over the course of time?
So okay, this is interesting. We've been talking about FloQacademy.
Yeah.
And how there's almost the like, this is too good to be true. What's in it for you guys? Why are you giving us free content? If we were advertising on there, do you think people would feel less skeptical about it?
I think psychologically there's definitely something to that, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, this is how they're making money. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because right now it is very much so. If you're a professional skeptic, you're going to look at it and be like, why is this free?
It's
like,
too good to be true.
This doesn't make sense.
Too good
What's
to be
your
true.
Play?
Yeah, totally. No, yeah. We're discussing how do we get as many people in FloQacademy as possible, and oddly enough, like we've spent a lot of money on the content. I think we're at like $1 million worth of content that we spend it on, and so people are skeptical, like, oh, why is this great library of content free when I have to pay for every other CPE course out there? And we're like, well, it's not really. Like selfishly, we want you to learn about FloQast, but we also don't want to pepper with advertisements to like make it overly annoying. So that's the mental, like the psychology of it is fascinating.
We've talked about your thought leadership brand as like a concept and kind of getting that going. And this does make me feel like there's a book in the focus of like the personality type that invests in the balance sheet. Cause this I think carries through to other parts of life, right? The goal is to focus on like the core foundation being good and everything else will follow. Don't focus on the decorations. And you talk about that, the accountant mindset of like, if you're actually caring about the balance sheet being good, like that's the difference between accounting and finance perhaps, right? Is like one's more income statement focused, the other one's more balance sheet focused. And I think it's the same thing. Like FloQacademy is like, well, just focus on building the good product, focus on making the best thing you can. And the other parts of the puzzle will come together and will come clear.
Yeah.
How it all works.
Add to the balance sheet.
Yeah.
Intangible value. Let's go.
Exactly.
Add to it.
That's really cool. But yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen with all of this, but definitely this is a fintech news piece to see, you know, if we start to see bank transactions having advertisements as part of it. And again, for things nothing to do with the banking experience that you're having.
That's where I'm like, when I start to see that, this is going to be fascinating to see it roll out. Quick story, something really interesting with advertising and commercials. So my daughter is 7 now, and like she'll have YouTube and she skips the ad, skips that all day. She's trained to do that. But then if I'm watching TV, she wants to watch the commercials. Like there's not the skip now button, and she enjoys watching them for some reason. So like, well, if I have a football game on, I might want to change the channel to the other game when it's on. And I'll be like, oh, commercials are on, I'm gonna change it. She's like, no, I want to watch it. Like, really? She's like, I like commercials. Like, it's so weird.
Like commercials, but don't like ads.
But she skips the ads. She's like mentally trained to skip ad because she wants to get back to her show. But I think if it's like football, which she doesn't care about, and then the commercial comes up, like maybe it's just that the commercial's more interesting than the game.
Sure.
And so she's interested in that. But it's a total difference of it was just like for us it was always let's get past this commercial as quickly as possible, or that's the time to go get your drink or whatever and go back to the show afterwards. So
there's probably plenty of people who watch the Super Bowl with the same mindset where like that's their favorite part. Yes. And the Super Bowl is more so like now it's a showcasing opportunity for brands to be like who can come up with the most clever and creative. So you're excited because you know that everyone's putting their best thing forward.
That's to me is one of the more impressive parts of the Super Bowl is that they've trained our society to want to watch commercials.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
So the last part about this piece with the fintech stuff is the FDIC is expected to release a proposed rule requiring banks to maintain ledgers for the benefit of accounts opened by third-party fintechs, so the banks can identify how much end-user money they're holding, according to people familiar with the matter who are unable to speak publicly about the coming proposal. So I don't know who these folks are, but banks would still be able to partner, of course, with middlemen companies such as Synapse, but would be required to consent access to third-party ledger and reconcile data each day under the proposal. So that's kind of interesting, like the requirements that they would have to face in order to maintain this. But this is all a result of the millions of people who lost access to their cash after a Synapses crash.
Okay. Yeah. This seems like a good thing to be working on.
This will be interesting, of course, when it comes to the compliance and what like every single time one of these things happens, it's just new regulations and new rules that whoever the financial institutions are have to be cognizant of and wary of and paying attention to.
So this is supporting my accounting transformation platform message, more regulation, more complexity.
Sure. So we can start moving on into that then.
However, a accelerating talent gap. All right, go.
Yeah,
go for it. Yep.
I could tell you've been probably having dreams about your deck.
I just got to do the pitch again. It was great. It's great. I love doing it.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, it's super exciting. And so actually moving into that direction, let's talk about automation, right? Because that's a major part of the transformation process. Automation, though, in this instance, before we get into accounting and the rest of fintech, is you heard about the strike for the longshoremen's union.
Yeah.
So the ILA had been on a 3-day strike. They say it suspended this 3-day strike until January 15th, actually. So we've bought a little bit more time to keep supply chains going.
They paused the strike while they go and find a new spokesman who doesn't look like the worst person in the world to be representing a labor union.
Yeah.
Could you believe that guy?
I saw a picture of his house, and it's insane.
Like you can't put on a gold chain and hop on a call like you're running the mafia and threaten the entire country. Yeah. The way the guy just threatened the American people on that call was infuriating to watch. Yeah. And I left being like, I'm generally in favor of unions, and I left being like, that guy's the worst spokesperson and makes me not want you to get this just because of how arrogant and threatening the guy was. So then his house comes out and they got to change some PR optics here. They need to find a new guy to be running that before they come back to the table, because that was a messed up way of approaching it.
I think that's been the union's most difficult thing in general. Unions across the board is always like great concept, good intention. At some point somebody gets bought out and it becomes corrupt, and then you have the people at the top making these decisions just for their own personal benefit as opposed to the benefit of the whole.
Did you see how he did it? You didn't see the speech he gave?
I didn't.
He's interviewing, dude. All right. And he's like, let me tell you what's going to happen. First week, it's going to be all over the news. There's going to be panic. People are going to be freaking out, but no one's going to really care. Second week, people are going to need stuff from the ships. We're not going to be there to help. We're not going to get stuff off. Car salesmen are going to start selling cars. No cars coming off the ships. Third week, we realize all the basic supplies we need aren't coming in. And he starts playing it out, and it's like, are you threatening me right now? Are you threatening me? Because it sounds like you're threatening me right now. And it was like really a messed up way to approach it. And I genuinely think that guy was a really poor decision to elect him. And he's on TV wearing a huge gold chain, talking like he runs the mob. Dude, you should go back. I recommend you watch it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I will.
It's crazy. Yeah, I'm wondering if you have the same reaction of me, which is basically like all of a sudden anti this union because of this guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I look forward to seeing that. I mean, that sounds...
Yeah. I have a nuanced take on unions, though, so that's a whole separate topic.
But the biggest issue, because it seems like they're going to find a way to strike a deal on some of the price increases of our cost of living increase to make the salaries go up, and they were talking about the amount. It did seem like a crazy absurd. It was like 5 years going up 75%, and I'm like, that's impressive for them to work out. But that's as far as the wages go. But the big issue is automation. And we always think about automation from the sense of like ChatGPT and automating software and stuff, but this is one of those like more classic robot automation situations where they're talking about actually having like, driverless vehicles that can go to the dock, and then when the ship pulls in, it's automatically taking the shipments off the containers off of the boat, putting it onto the transportation. One of the big arguments for that is, of course, you think about like a COVID situation when supply chains completely stopped. They actually wouldn't have had to stop if you had robots doing it, because robots can't catch a virus. Well, they can catch a computer virus, but
my understanding is the port of Long Beach is fairly automated.
Yes.
They don't fall under this union. And that port was open during COVID.
Which is a prime example.
And like almost every port globally has embraced automation, and it helps with accuracy. It gets stuff done faster. It's like kind of I think it's a pretty dangerous job doing this all the time. And so it's safer for people. Like, I don't know. That seems like we're, a union holding on to like a relic of the past of something that probably should be automated, and capitalism will ultimately win.
Right.
I guarantee.
Well, I'm going to go back to I'm going to just keep going back to this theme of the balance sheet versus the income statement thing, because I'm loving this right now. I'm going to have dreams about this. Is you're basically going for the short term of like, well, we want our people to keep their jobs and to get their pay, so we're going to reject robots coming in and moving stuff, even though it's clearly a job that can get automated, which is just very nearsighted, as opposed to looking at the long term of like, are the ports going to become too inefficient? Is it just going to become eventually too expensive compared to the ports that do have automation? And also, like, you're hindering your own country's growth and development. And look, there's ways to compromise and find solutions. One of them, I think, being you can take the money that you save from doing this transformation to automate the ports and retrain workers into other areas that they might be more interested in, or other skill sets that you can. It's not like we're cutting it off today and all these people are going to be unemployed. Like, you can come up with a solution for how to pivot the savings into a more useful.
So the higher in a supply chain the prices, the more impact it's going to have on the ultimate price to the consumer. So, for example, if you go to the most extreme example, if like mining was twice as expensive to then build a battery, there's going to be profit along the supply chain, and that initial expense is going to get marked up all throughout the supply chain. So if we mined coltan, for example, properly, ethically, the price of an iPhone would go up significantly because there's profit to be had at every step along the supply chain, and that's like phase one of the supply chain around all that. The port is a very early part of the supply chain for a lot of what we buy in America. And I remember talking to somebody right after COVID hit, and he was in the shipping, like import, export type stuff. And he was saying that his cost per container had gone from 4,000 to 12. I'm making up numbers, but something. I found it really interesting how he just simply boiled it down to my cost per container. That was how he thought about it. And basically, if his cost went up, he passed that on to the next person.
They pass it on.
And they pass it on. All of a sudden, inflation starts to pick up its ugly head. So would automating the ports actually have a deflationary effect on all consumer prices of things that come through ports? If so, perhaps we should be in favor of that.
I would definitely be in favor of that. I mean, it makes sense, though, because each person along the way is going to mark it up accordingly to what they need to make up the difference. Yeah. It's not just like you said, it has an exponential effect down the line. It's not, or compounding effect, I should say, down the line.
And you're paying whatever someone pays to have a container go across the ocean. A large part of what determines that price is how much it costs to unload that thing or load it at the dock.
It's crazy how much my cousin is in the industry, and he's the one that tipped me off. He's like, hey, by the way, ILA is about to go on strike on Monday, so stock up on your goods. And I was like, oh, okay.
Were you stocking up? I saw the lines at Costco were getting crazy. It felt like COVID all over again.
So I found out that this was just the East Coast. This had
it's all like east. Don't they have the Gulf? They have ports in the Gulf as well?
It's the Gulf up the whole East Coast and through the Gulf or whatever. So I was like, all right, well, West Coast seems to be like that's all right. That's chill for now.
Yeah, we're good.
But so as soon as I found that, I was like, okay, I don't have to stress as much. But I did think that was he works in that industry, and it's millions of dollars per ship that come in just to get these goods over here. And you don't think about, I mean, it's crazy to think about, but like shipping is still the #1 method of world transportation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Boats, which have probably
Boats,
the oldest transportation mode.
And then are trucks probably #2 still?
I wonder about trains,
I think
right?
just I think long trucking is still just so huge.
But even trucking is kind of gets you down to the smaller areas where it's like already at the warehouse. I'm pretty sure that, I mean, you have those trains that are like
trains.
a mile long train that just is taking stuff across the country.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't think about that stuff because you don't see it on a daily basis. You see the trucks on the highway on your way into work. But anyway, so I thought that was interesting stuff. So we'll see, of course, what happens with that. If we can automating supply chains is definitely, I think, a good opportunity for us to drive prices down to the consumer level. So we'll see how that shapes out.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to bullish or bearish. This is a little bit talking about automation, but I wanted to talk about, since it's timely with the World Series.
I love a baseball topic.
Baseball, right? Baseball topics. I figured I'd try to lean into the stuff we like. The MLB is talking about switching to a challenge system full-time for robot umpires, which is experimented in AAA. Now, this had happened over the summer, but it's coming back into popularity right now. I don't know if you saw a recent Garrett Cole was shaking his head at the umpire. It was a clear ball. It was called a strike. It was a clear strike that was called a ball. And he's just shaking his head. He's like, unbelievable. Then he throws a ball, which he knows is a ball, and it gets called a strike. And he's like, he can't help but like laugh to himself.
Yeah.
And obviously the call went his way the second time, but he's like, I don't care if it went my way. Like, I just want to throw the ball and have it be called what it is that I actually threw, not something else.
He doesn't appreciate the makeup call.
Maybe if it's a makeup call.
I messed that one up. Yeah. All right, I'll give you the next one. Even it out.
It seems like it was one of those things that was just going on the whole entire game, and you're like, what's happening? So, our robot umpires ready for the MLB debut. They're like, not so fast perhaps, but So it's worth resurfacing. How do you feel about robots?
I remember back to this conversation. The umpires union was very against them because they thought the job was going to be automated. But we're still going to, even if we move robo umpires into the world, it's like we're still going to have people standing behind home plate to be an umpire. Yeah. We're not going to like completely get rid of umpires. So I think that has opened up the umpiring community to this a little bit more. My understanding, I watched I was way too deep in the YouTube rabbit hole watching some stuff about this. But I guess the ball and strike accuracy is not quite as good as we give it credit for. Like on the screens, when we're watching baseball on TV, there's the box over it. That box isn't necessarily accurate, and every stadium has a different camera location, so your angle in on the pitcher is a little different. And so the like optics of it as a fan, you're not always right. And so there was an interesting study where the guy, he looked at what the calls were on a game cast, and then afterwards on the next day would compare it to like the MLB app, which is a different system, and there's not 100% accuracy. Like what you saw on TV is maybe 98% comparable to what you saw through like the other form of MLB tracking all this stuff. So point being, I don't think the radar is perfect quite yet. All this said, the argument is humans aren't perfect either. Right. So, but would you rather have automation doing it improperly or a human doing it improperly? Like at least you have a fall person.
Right.
I think we'd rather have a fall guy as society and an umpire to get fired up about.
One of the things I think which has been interesting to see on social media is they'll grade umpires the next day on how well they scored based on where it actually was. I mean, I think we do have the technology to get this to work. I mean, we have the overhead camera that you're seeing. You get that angle all the time where they'll show you, was it outside or was it over the plate? That's one easy way. And then you just have to cross-reference that with another one. To your point, the fact that the cameras are of different angles at each venue makes it a little more difficult. And I think this is where I imagine the reason why, because people said, oh, well, what if we just get rid of the strike zone box so it stops getting people irritated, right? Because you're at the game watching, you have no idea where the ball is. Like you're just hearing stuff.
I don't know. I knew one.
Yeah.
No, it's so funny. Where where our FloQast seats are? Like down the left field line. It's so funny, like arguing balls and strikes from those seats. You're like, come on.
Oh, yeah. And because it's funny, you always see the people in the dugout and they're like yelling at there. I was like, you're looking at it from the side. You have any idea where that crossed the plate at all? I don't know. But I think the fact that if they were to get rid of it, obviously it would be an uproar. But I think it was necessary to add those boxes in on screen because, like you said, from the different angles, a ball that looks like it's directly over from that angle is outside. And I noticed because like I remember watching games before there was the box, and they always look like that's right down the middle, and it's because of the angle, it was like way outside.
Yeah. I guess my commentary was more, if you're a fan, you're not always right based on just whatever the K box is saying right there. But I agree with you also. I do think the technology is there to be accurate enough to where we should probably just do it. Yeah. I'm with you. So I agree. And the approach I would give, I'd have the box. I'd give the umpire a little thing that buzzes if it's a strike and doesn't if it's a ball, and then they still call a ball and strike. Sure. So we like get the, we still have the old timey, and the guy can make the call and everything.
Stay. And here's actually the thing that they're also trying out in AAA, and I think this seems to be the most popular version. Is it's a challenge system.
I love it.
I think it's great.
I think it's really cool.
It adds an extra element to the game, which I think it makes it exciting, and it also makes you, if you get like 6 per game, you have to be really careful of when you're going to use that challenge call, and you have to be pretty darn confident. And I wonder if they're going to leave it up to can the batter, tell their coach like, I'm telling you that was.
No, the batter is the one who calls, who makes the decision. But what's interesting, that's an argument for umpires are still calling balls and strikes.
Right.
So you still have the human element,
right?
And then it's just
you have to challenge.
So I think it has the best entertainment factor
for sure.
And at the end of the day, it's entertainment.
I mean, they do that. I mean, they already do that. Call at first base if you're like, nah, I'm pretty sure he was there. Tag out at second. You can challenge that.
But dude, it's really cool when you see the hitter does it, and then it's like resolved within 2 seconds. Right. It's not, there isn't a delay to the game, and they get the call thing, and it creates this. The dynamic between the umpire and the hitter becomes really different, and there's new pressure on the umpire. And one of the interesting things is I was watching an interview with it was Freddie Freeman, and he was talking about how the kids who are getting called up now, they're like just getting to the major leagues. Their awareness of the strike zone is unlike anything these guys have seen before, because they're so fixated on knowing within 1 inch and being able to challenge it appropriately and all this kind of stuff. So it's like already changing the mentality and the skill set of kids in the minor leagues to where, they come up and they have a better command of the strike zone than a veteran who's been doing it for 12 years.
What's also interesting is that the top of the strike zone is 2 inches shorter in the minors than it is in the majors. Isn't
it based on
But yes,
letters
yes, but it's also 2 inches off. And it's another experiment where they're trying to see if they can reduce strikeouts by making the strike zone itself a little bit smaller. So that's another reason why you have to have a good eye, because the pitch that's 2 inches too high, you don't want to swing at it because it'll be a ball.
And we realized that a high fastball is one of the best pitches for striking people out, and so we're trying to take away the.
Yeah, but I don't like that, but
it's like playing God a little bit with the sport. Yeah.
Look, football tried to they want people throwing the ball more, so they give more opportunities for there to be defensive pass interference because they want quarterbacks to throw it more and have them a better opportunity as opposed to just running. Nobody wants to see people run the ball that looks like you're playing high school. So anyway, it's interesting to see how the sport gets also manipulated by the entertainment factor.
You don't want to see the triple option being run all the time? That's a Nebraska football style? Never mind. You're probably too young for that.
So you bullish on robo strike zones?
I'm bullish on. I like the compromise. I like the drama of you should be able to challenge it, but let there be the human error as well. I think that would make it the most fun.
That's cool. So we'll see how that plays out, but that'll definitely be something interesting to keep an eye on and to watch. So as we finish up with Make Meme LOL, this does have to do, I think, sort of with the notion of what role we play in like what type of technical skills we actually have, and also has to do with your offshore, the offshore versus automation and AI. So this is not sure if AI is better or just cheaper. I think it's a valid inquiry, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah, I agree.
This is from Futurama. It's the meme of the main character of Futurama for those who are just listening, and it's just not sure if AI is better or just cheaper.
As with most things, the answer is depends on what it is. But yeah, in some cases, I would argue it's may or may not be cheaper, and in some cases it can be detrimental if not built properly. In other ways, I think it's really helpful. So
yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think it matters, right? Because I mean, you could say the same thing about going offshore. It wasn't. I don't think it's better typically. It's cheaper.
It's cheaper. It's not better.
But it's not better. And then AI, if it's cheaper and not better, then it's kind of a net neutral at that point, because what you save in money from time, you make up for in someone else having to spend time reviewing, which is typically how the offshore stuff, from my experience, tended to go. It wasn't like it was saving overall time. You just had to spend time doing more reviewing than the doing itself. But at that point, you might have as well have just done it yourself in the first place.
Have you heard the saying, do you want it, you can have it good, you get good, fast, or cheap, pick two?
Pick two.
Yeah.
Yep, they talk about that in production.
It seems like AI is attempting to have it all, but good, fast, or cheap appears to be a law of the world that's held constant so far. I'd love to. We'll see if it can do both.
It is definitely cheaper. I think it's definitely faster. It's most of the time cheaper, and the question is how good can they get it?
Yeah.
Or is it going to become too expensive in order to get it to be that good?
So will AI fundamentally change this equation?
Yeah. But I do think I do think about accountants' overall adverse nature to things that they don't know. Like, I'm very much like, I just want to know how everything works, just for my own sanity. It feels good to just know how it works. AI, I mean, they talk about it all the time. It'll help automate your job. And I feel like a lot of the times accountants don't necessarily know what that means.
Bingo. Could not agree more.
And so how do you explain what it means in the context of like a transformation platform that would make them comfortable? Because you can go to the whole room and everybody's like, yeah, AI and automation, and this is important, and we got to get behind this. But has there anything that you've noticed that like resonates with them to be like, okay, I understand this?
You have to walk through an example. That's the cleanest way. I mean, and that's also how my peon brain processes things. Needing an example is the easiest way for it. But when I explain the benefit allocation journal entry to people and walk through the process before FloQast and after FloQast, it clicks with everybody, and that's how you explain the how. I completely agree with you. Accountants want to know how things work. Yeah, totally. I would argue, software engineers and accountants are the two people who care the most about how stuff gets done, and then FloQast happens to be loaded with both of those of those personalities. So it's really important. And so I found just using an actual example, and then once you use the example, you even get more questions on how, and then you can move into more like, well, it's a platform. You can chat with it. It produces code. That's how it automates this. And you can but starting with the process example and the before and after, then that feeds into deeper discussion, and you can get the head nodding and people get it. And then like they want to follow up and have more use cases for you, things like that.
Yeah, I do think I found when trying to explain to people how the AI-ification of things works and the use of AI in the ability to create like a very nuanced, specific code to your very specific needs, you can walk them through, well, how come you can't automate this process? And they say, well, we can't automate it because of X problem and Y problem and Z problem. But then as you start to address each of those problems and how you can actually use AI to address them in a very practical manner, that's probably one of the key ways to explain it. Yeah. And to your point, I remember seeing these books about, I think like manifestation books or something, where it's like, you don't need to understand how the light bulb works to appreciate the light that it gives. And I'm like, no, I need to know how the light bulb works. No, I need to know how the light bulb works. And I'll still appreciate the light that comes out of it. But like also like, if we're on a island, I want to know how to recreate electricity. And that's, you can obviously go down a rabbit hole with that, but that's definitely one of those things that it is interesting. And I have a weird sense of pride in having that sort of mindset as an accountant, right? Of being somebody who thinks beyond just what's in front of you. This is how it works, and that's it. It's like, no, I want to understand the underlying on how it works. And I do think it will be encouraging for accountants to hear, like, no, you can design the code will build itself. You don't have to worry about that part. You can design this by telling it what exactly it is that you need, so you can really focus on the transaction and the events that occurred and what you need the outcome to be, and then let it map itself in between.
Yep. Completely agree. And we need it because of that talent gap.
Yeah.
It's absurd. People should be freaking out about it. In the same way we should be freaking out about our national debt, like waking up every morning and looking at that, like people should see this slide, and it's terrifying. I'm objectively concerned for accounting right now.
I mean, I think about the time that would be saved from not having to go and build that complex Excel formula, but you can just ask, this is what I need this thing to do, and then it can do it. I mean, there's applications within platforms, and then there's just applications in your day-to-day job of how you can utilize that. So it's cool. It's exciting. I mean, we're here to hopefully save the day.
Yeah, and give people back some time.
Yeah. So that is taking us to the concluding cycle of this inaugural episode in the new digs. Lots of new faces at the company as well. Lots of new products at the company as well over this last year. So I think I wanted to sort of conclude with, as your journey of, I always like to do a little check-in in your journey as CEO, and as we've grown to this point now where, I mean, I feel like we're pushing towards 800 people internationally. What's been your biggest sort of learning experience over this past year of growth and evolution?
That's a really good question. I would say this year is the first time in a long time that we've brought new executives in. So we, Josh in at the CRO level, Yiftak's our leader on the engineering side now, and getting outside perspectives to come in and see what you're doing is really healthy. Like I very much value long tenured employees. I think that's really important, and you want to keep your good people around, but I'm really appreciating outside perspective, and myself included. We can get stuck in our traps and our ways of doing things, and it's just like, oh, this has worked for us, so let's just keep doing it. So you might be blind to maybe some things that aren't going as well and not recognizing it's a problem, but when someone comes in from the outside, they're either like, oh, well, this isn't going well, or, oh, you guys have really nailed this one, this is going really well, like keep doing that. Having the outsider perspective has been really healthy. So at my level, that's been a big learning. So I love that we've been able to like retain a lot of our longer tenured people and then bring in new leadership. And that's personally, like having Josh in here has freed up my time to be able to do other stuff. So like, I've been heavily involved in the positioning, the messaging, the new story that we're telling. And it's been like a lot of fun and reinvigorating for me to bring Josh in, see him do his thing and be the great leader that I was hoping and expecting him to be. Right. Like it's played out. He's doing everything we want him to be doing. And then now I can focus on other stuff where honestly, I'm way more impactful helping with these types of things than being on any sort of call that Josh is on. Like he's better than me at those things, and it's not my specialty, and I can do other things that help move the business forward. Yeah, what's been really cool for me is to be on the calls with him, and then obviously the conversation with you, and then we see the different elements of the company, working conjunctly in different ways. Like some of it is introverted facing and like optimizing our organizational structure, and then some of it is on the broad scheme of positioning out in the marketplace. And I think it's good for employees who have been here for a long time too, to get those perspectives, because sometimes you don't know what the real world really is like outside of the fantasy land that you kind of we have a little bit of a coddled FloQast fantasy land for sure.
It's like even people are like, oh, I feel like the snacks have gotten like not as good. I was like, well, you have like 3 times as many people, and like that can get, and like there was a point when I was like one of like 5 people coming to the office or whatever, and well, we got the whole snack budget to just ourselves, right? You know what I mean? Like
quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity. But it is, I think, super valuable to have like the mentorship that comes from people who have external experience, while also maintaining that like transparent candor where you're able to have conversations openly. And sometimes somebody comes in and they have, well, this is what works, and you also need to fight back on that and be like, yes, but sometimes you need to think a little differently and be a little bit innovative, right?
Yeah.
I think about one of the ones that recently came to mind was like thinking about The Godfather, which became my favorite movie when I saw it for the first time a year and a half ago. And it broke every rule. Like the poster was against all the rules that the marketing team had said, no, that's not how you market a movie. Like you need to have these faces on it and the people, and they ended up just going with the puppeteer logo, which was
like an iconic poster.
Right, iconic. And that went against every rule about how you're supposed to market the movies. They wanted to cut it down by like an hour from the length that it actually ended up being, which would have took out so much of the plot, but it's because runtime, you wanted to be able to play it 4 times a day. And because of the length of the movie, they were only able to play it 3 times a day. So that went against every rule, but they were like, hey, we're going to sacrifice, again, this is income statement balance sheet. You're going to sacrifice the value of this thing in order to get the immediate payoff. But then all of a sudden, you'd probably see the ratings tank, and it wouldn't be as good. It wouldn't be as popular. So they broke a lot of rules that you would typically have to follow per industry standard guidelines by having a no-name already at that point really had done nothing of that notoriety. taking a shot at doing this thing in a totally different way, and obviously it had a big payoff. So sometimes it's always going to be calculated risk. And
it's probably fair to say that had they followed the textbook, we would not be talking about the movie today.
Correct.
Like that's pretty wild.
But they did have those conversations, and they had to get together in the room. And the seasoned exec said, "This is what you need to do." The people who were on it said, "This is what we need to do," and they felt passionately about it. And eventually, if people were able to kind of see the vision, you're like, you know what, it's worth taking the shot to go make it happen, and it worked. And
I like it.
So I think it's a good balance. I think between it's Libra season, so I'm all about balance.
I used to hate calling people on the cell phone. I'm just not a cell phone talker kind of guy. Josh is big into cell phones. And what I love about it, I'll get a call from him. It will last 2 minutes. It'll last 2 minutes. He'll be like, all right, cool, bye. And it's just over. And I realize the reason I don't like hopping on a cell phone is because I dread ending the call, and I don't know when it's going to end, and I don't want to be stuck. And maybe I'm like scarred from childhood stuff. I think it's like a childhood trauma thing with Anyway, that's a deep-seated thing. Maybe we can get into a different one. But I realized, you can just end a call like that. Sick. And now I'm like all cell phone all the time. I call, it's like, you just talk for 3 minutes, boom, okay, cool, talk to you later, boom, bye. And it's so much more productive. So I don't know. Yeah. One of my big pieces of advice, like start picking up the cell phone a little bit more. You're allowed to talk for 2 minutes and then just say, okay, bye. Once you're done with whatever you need.
And I think the lesson that people could take out of that is sometimes there's something else which is the blocker, and it's not the thing that's directly in front of you. And in this case, it was not the phone call, it was ending the call. That seemed to be the issue. But when you realize that that's not a blocker at all, then you can go ahead and do this.
Like I got my first call from Josh on a Friday. I was like, what the? Hello? What's everything okay? He's like, yeah, man, just catching up. How's your week? Okay, cool. Bye. Have a great week. I was like, wait, you can just end it like that? Oh, man. All right. I'm in. I'm all in. Yeah. So I call Chris. I call Razak.
And that's the thing you don't get if Josh doesn't come in and provide that. So
outside perspective. I appreciate
it. All right. Well, great having you here again for this episode and the new digs. And I think what will be cool is you'll see the room transform along with the show. And,
boom. The company and the product.
With the company and the product and the role of accountants.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Drew. Appreciate it. And thank you again, Studios team. The build out's been awesome. I really appreciate all the hard work that went into this. I know it was a lot to move spots and set this up, and it's pretty sick that I would say it's better than our prior setup.
Yeah, love it. So cool. Great to see everybody next time. Thanks for checking out the FinTech Flo. As a reminder, this episode is available for CPE credit, and you can get that at FloAcademy or on the Earmark app. Details are in the description below.